A series of horrendous crimes shakes up a small town. Who and why is strangling young women? Don't miss out. The victims' ghosts will lead the clairvoyants straight to the murderer's home. You are watching Psychic Investigations. There are only true, genuinely shocking investigations conducted by those who call themselves clairvoyants here. Using their supernatural abilities, they solve resonant criminal cases and unravel amazing mystical riddles. In this episode, the psychics embark on an investigation into the murder of Yulia Hlazunóva, a young woman. Her 2-year-old son stayed an orphan after his mother was strangled in the downtown.
A young woman's body was discovered in a schoolyard on the 18th of September.
On the eve of the tragedy, Yulia told her common-law husband she was going to spend the night at her mother's, where the little Mykyta was staying. However, Yulia never showed up at her mother's home.
The young woman was found dead in a location that is not on the way to her parents' place.
To Victoria, Yulia's mother, the news of her daughter's death was deeply shocking.
I didn't scream. I felt no panic. I simply howled. I miss her so much. It's so hard.
Yulia, like her mother, also married early. She married the young man she'd loved since school. But when she got pregnant, he tried to persuade her to have an abortion. Yulia refused and gave birth to her son, while her husband left the family. Now, the 2-year-old Mykyta lives with Victoria and her husband, Kirilo. But who and why took his mom's life so brutally?
The forensic examination revealed that Yulia Hlazunóva was murdered at midnight. No traces of sexual assault were found on her body. The motive of the murderer remains unclear.
The project's strongest experts, Kayal Alekperov and Olena Kurilova, took on the case.
I asked my djinns who'd murdered the woman and had a strange vision. A hand with a little turtle.
Could it be a tattoo?
A wedding ring with a turtle figure. And one more thing. The djinns told me, search for the number 5.
Yesterday, I was working with the woman's photo when I heard her spirit's voice. It was not this woman's voice. She told me, "He whose fiery marks are on me leaves his traces on them."
I asked my sacred book where we should search for the murderer. And the book told me, the woman with the double heart has the answer. But who could that woman be? And what does she have to do with the murder? And where do we find her?
This is unbelievable. The picture suddenly falls off the wall.
Is this the photo of the town we're in?
Yes.
Olena, this might be some kind of hint. Could it probably be where the murderer is hiding? Let me take a photo of it just in case.
Half an hour later, the psychics meet Yulia's family and friends.
Good afternoon.
My name is Victoria. This is my husband, Kirill. I would really like you to help find the killer who did this so that he could be punished.
I see her. She's holding a baby in her arms and she says, "Mom, Kitik is now with you."
His name's Mykyta, and we call him Kitik.
My book says that some marks were left on Yulia's arms. The bruises on her arms were left by the man she loved.
Victor.
The young woman met the 27-year-old Victor through their common friends. A relationship started, and soon the couple began living together. Yulia was happy. Her son finally had a father.
They had a conflict.
A fight?
It was 2 days before the murder.
Yes, and he grabbed her by the arms. She showed them to me on the eve of her death.
Yulia says, "He was the last person to see me before I died."
Where's Victor now?
Victor isn't contacting anybody because, if I'm not wrong, he has a new relationship now.
It's been less than a fortnight.
And a new relationship so soon?
I need to see him to know if he has anything to do with your daughter's death.
The psychics and the victim's parents go to the place where Yulia and Victor lived. Kayal Alekbarov suddenly stops.
I feel the murderer was standing next to the entrance. The feeling is sharp.
Come on.
This is horrible. Did the man she loved really strangle Yulia? His apartment is in this section of the building.
There's nobody in there. I see the apartment is empty.
The psychics dial Victor, but can't reach him. To have at least some information, the clairvoyants tune in to the energy of Victor's home.
The death energy isn't emanating from this apartment. I see that at the moment of Yulia's death, her man was having fun at a restaurant.
At the moment of Yulia's death, he was at a cafe.
There were a man and a woman sitting next to each other.
His brother and his wife.
That night, the security cameras caught Victor leaving the cafe. Yulia was already dead by then. Before it, Victor didn't go out of the cafe.
Yulia's spirit says, had he gone with me, I'd be still alive.
They were together at the cafe, but they quarreled, so she left alone.
She said, I'm going to Mom's. I'm going to pack my things. But she didn't go to your place. She went here.
My jinns are telling me that a young woman has important information about your daughter.
Yulia has a conversation. 2 female voices. She seems to be talking on the phone. Let's go outside.
A young woman Yulia was talking to on her way here heard what the murderer said.
She was talking on the phone to Marina, her friend.
She told me, Marina, somebody's following me. She was most probably at the building's front door. I heard a male voice in the distance. It said, open up. Then my phone battery died, and I tried to get through to her from my sister's phone, but she was unavailable.
This is why Kayal Alekbarov felt the murderer's energy the moment he approached the building.
He had a knife. He held her from behind and threatened her with the knife. He's whispering to her, if you scream, I'll slash you.
The feeling brings the psychics to the school, to the spot where Yulia was found, strangled.
I feel it happened here.
This is where my daughter was found.
I'm going to contact your daughter's spirit. I asked her, what did the man look like? Did you see him? And she said, no, he was behind me all the time. He was strangling me.
Did he use something, or did he do it with his bare hands?
Not the hands. She's showing me something made of a twisted piece of cloth. He brought it with him.
So the murderer had planned his crime in advance.
Kayal, look. This is what I see. He does something like this, with the cloth, and she weakens and falls to her knees.
Now, I see the murderer step on your daughter's throat with his foot in a black shoe.
The smell. It stinks. His hands stink.
It smells like cooking oil.
Wait, Yulia is trying to tell me something. Yulia? My God, it's another Yulia. She's also dead, it's her spirit. There's another body, there's another young woman who was strangled to death. She's a little older.
This is my daughter.
Another murdered woman. This is insane. And her name is also Yulia.
Yulia Karakusha was found strangled in a town park early in the morning on the 9th of October. It happened 3 weeks after the first murder was committed. And just as with the first murder, there were no witnesses to the crime.
What's your name?
Inna.
We needed to see the place where the other Yulia died.
It's not far from the first spot. The woman often used this path on her way from home to the bus stop.
Was her body found here?
Over here, yes.
Yulia worked in the neighboring town. It's over 100 kilometers from her town, so she always left home at dawn to catch the first morning bus.
When Inna said goodbye to her daughter that morning, she didn't even think it was the last time she saw her alive.
I offered to walk there with her, but she said, "Mom, please don't, I can make it. Better go back to bed."
The bus stop is not more than 200 meters from her home, but Yulia never reached it.
She's lying on this bench. Yulia. She's lying on her back.
Yes.
What was she covered with?
A large navy blue towel.
Yulia was going to the neighboring town for a few days, so she took a traveling bag with her. The murderer took the towel out of it and used it to cover the victim.
She says, "Mom, you didn't recognize me at first."
An hour and a half later, Yulia's mother was going to the market through the park when she saw an ambulance.
Yes. I thought it was a homeless person sleeping. So I passed by her. I asked them, "Has anyone died and the ambulance arrived to take them?" But they told me, "No, there's a young woman there." When they mentioned her black hair, I stopped listening and rushed to her. And then I saw it was my Yulia. I pressed her to my chest, but her lips were blue already.
The murderer laid the woman down carefully on the bench and put the bag under her head. Naturally, the passers-by wouldn't pay attention to a drunk lady sleeping. He's very calculating. And before somebody pays attention to her, he would be far away.
I see the number 5. This is the time when her life ended.
Yes.
He put the loop around her throat from behind. And again, I see some twisted piece of cloth. My gins are telling me there was a footprint on your daughter's throat.
He does it like this on her throat.
Yes. There was the mark on her throat that looked like it was crushed with a shoe.
Both women had the prints of a male shoe on their throats.
I again feel the smell of the cooking oil. It's sunflower oil.
Is this the same man?
I feel the same energy of aggression and hatred as at the first sight of the murder.
How do we find the murderer? Neither victim saw his face.
I recall that in the morning, the photo of your town fell off the wall at the hotel. I took a picture of it with my phone.
It turned out it was the photo of the local TV tower. The psychics and the victim's relatives go there.
I feel the murderer was here many times. I see the 5 again.
Could it be the number of a building?
I feel negative energy emanating from it.
5. Here it is, the number 5.
Hello?
But the clairvoyants have been feeling a man all this time. Could it be a mistake?
Olena and I were tuning in to the person who murdered 2 women in your town. The feeling brought us here.
You're going to have
This
a girl.
woman is pregnant. But what relation does she have to the brutal crimes?
It was the double heart, the one Kayal mentioned.
The woman with the double heart has the answer. You're not wearing a wedding ring, but you're married.
Yes.
And during the proposal, you got a strange ring on your finger.
Yes, it was a trinket. A turtle-shaped trinket with a ring.
Who gave you the turtle?
Yes, Vadim.
Was it your husband?
He kneeled and said, "Be my wife." And then he put it on my finger.
Seeing psychics and a crowd of people at the gate, Maria's mother came to support her daughter.
Call your husband.
He's in jail.
What was he arrested for? Was he a suspect in a murder?
An attempted rape.
The proceeding regarding the attempted rape of a minor is currently underway.
She would keep following him everywhere. She was in love with him madly.
What's her name?
Karina.
Karina is a 15-year-old girl who brought the case against Maria's husband. It turned out that Maria knows her, as she and her husband and their friends saved Karina from rapists last year.
We were chilling by the riverside when we saw some guys dragging the girl somewhere. We began shouting, threatening them to call the police. They fled immediately and we took her home. Karina liked Vadim a lot. He's a good man and he's really good looking with those blue eyes. So she began bothering him.
However, Karina told the police quite the opposite.
She claimed he restrained her and threw her on a couch and tried to rape her. Karina claims she scared him with an electric shocker and ran away.
Was your husband ever aggressive?
No, he's a kind, loving, and caring husband.
I see your husband in a cage, but it's a vision from the past, and it's somehow connected with another girl. Was he ever sentenced for murder?
Yes.
What a twist. Does this mean that Vadim has taken someone's life before?
In 2007, Vadim was sentenced to 13 years in prison for the gruesome murder of an underage girl. She was raped and strangled.
10 years ago, Maria and Vadim were at a party with their friends. Among them was the 15-year-old Nadia.
That evening, she was trying to kiss him and she hugged him. When I saw it, I had a quarrel with him. And the next morning, that girl's body was found.
I saw how he murdered that girl. First, she flirted with him, but then she rejected him. And then Vadim got really furious.
She wasn't raped by the man alone, but also with other things. She was bruised all over. Her skin was purple. She was beaten badly. I am convinced he didn't do it. He was slandered because he had no alibi.
As it turned out, Maria and Vadim had been dating since they both were youths. But after the man was imprisoned, Maria didn't see him for a while. Eventually, she decided to pay him a visit. The affection was rekindled once more.
When I saw him, I felt numb all over.
Maria married Vadim straight in the prison, hence the turtle-shaped trinket instead of the proper wedding ring.
Vadim spent almost 10 years in jail until he was released on parole. The authorities believed that he deserved amnesty for his good behavior.
There's something in your husband that makes him commit violence. I can feel it. There's something manic in his blood, but you won't admit it.
He committed a murder 10 years ago. Were there any burns on the body?
There were, yes.
There were lots of cigarette burns on her.
Finally, I realized what the words of the girl from my vision. The marks on the strangled women's throats were left by the same man who'd left the burns on his first victim's skin.
Where was your husband on the nights when the two women were murdered?
He spent the first night at home, and the other night, he was at his mother's in the countryside.
The murder was at about midnight. He could have come back home.
It's quite possible that Vadim strangled Yulia Hlazunóva at midnight and spent the rest of the night home.
And the second murder was at 5 in the morning.
Vadim's mother said he'd arrived in the morning of the 9th of October. It means he could have easily committed the murder at 5 and an hour later, be at hers, 20 kilometers away from the site.
As a young man, Vadim raped and murdered a girl. 10 years later, he met Karina. She reminded him of his first victim. Just as that girl, she lured him and then rejected him. It was a trigger.
It's a miracle Karina is still alive. I saw that man trying not only rape her, but also strangle her.
I spoke to Karina at the police station. She told me he'd grabbed her by the throat twice. This is what she told me herself.
But neither of the strangled women was raped.
The murderer didn't assault both women to fulfill his desires. He didn't know them and wanted nothing but revenge. He strangled them because he felt fury.
The psychics say that the murderer smelled sunflower oil.
That and worked at an oil mill.
So, this is why the psychics felt the smell. After the release from prison, Vadim worked at a factory that made cooking oil.
We're done here and we shared our vision.
Now the authorities have to prove his guilt.
Thank you so much.
Kayal, thank you kindly.
After the psychic's investigation, I found that the law enforcers carried out a number of examinations. The DNA examination showed that both women were indeed strangled by Vadim.
He fully admitted his guilt.
Now the man is facing a sentence for 2 murders, and it's highly unlikely he'll be released under an amnesty this time. It means the cruel maniac will never take anyone else's life. If you're impressed by the story, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new shocking investigations by our psychics.